Sometimes a man is wrong. Oh, she took 5 steps. Oh, and she was gone. Oh, it's one of those times. Oh, it's one of those times. She said, I know you ain't got a cheating heart. Oh, your love is true. You just gotta, she never gonna fall. Oh, it's one of those times. Oh, it's one of those times. She don't mean a thing. She just had eyes of fire in a heart so cold. One just lost control. One of those times. Oh, I can't admit sometimes a man is wrong. Oh, she took 5 steps. Oh, she was gone. Oh, it's one of those times. Oh, it's one of those times. Thank you.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, folks. Hey, how are you all? It's very good to see you here. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, here with you on the ever-popular No Soundbites Allowed. And I am here with my co-host, who is in the background there. Go ahead, John.
I'm glad to be back finally. Back on the horse.
That's right. It's John, the intern. He is back with us. And we're all happy to be here with you. We're starting a little bit early just because we want to cover a couple of issues, but more importantly, we want to spend almost all of our time talking with Steve Cornwell. And just for people to know, Steve Cornwell is the Broome County DA currently. He is not seeking re-election, which would be happening this year. And instead, back in January, he noted that he was going to be giving up his position as DA and would be seeking other opportunities. Well, back in January, one of the first people to mention what those other opportunities would be was, in fact, this program, No Soundbites Allowed, same day. And we announced at that point that he was going to be running for the New York 22nd District. As it turned out, we were correct. And in this month, July, we saw that Steve Cornwell did in fact come out and make his announcement that he is going to be the one of the candidates for the New York 22nd District. And so we're looking forward to hearing from him and hearing some of the things he has to say about this. It should be quite interesting to hear what candidate Steve Cornwell can offer to the people of the New York 22nd District. And I think it's going to be very important because this is one of the top 10 races, if not the top 3 races for Congress in 2020. We've seen in 2016, 2018, that the New York 22nd District has been one of the most important races in the nation, some of the largest amounts of money, some of the biggest attention, some of the biggest ads throughout the entire nation. We expect 2020 is going to be the same. But let me first start off by saying, hey, Howie Coleman, thank you for being here. I see Christine Smith. She's with us. And good afternoon to you too, Christine. Happy to see you both here. I know there are many other people that Facebook is not letting us see. We are doing this live on Facebook. So if it drags or drops a little bit, that's because of, very simply, Facebook. They don't like conservative thought. But beyond that, and I want to thank Steve Seppersond for being with us as well. Congratulations on the win on the school board. And we're looking forward to hearing from everybody as we have our conversation with Steve Cornwell. But before he shows up, and he should be here any moment, and we're looking forward to speaking with him immediately, one of the first things I want to talk about, there's something that's been running rampant in the last couple of days. And you've probably seen it on Facebook, on other social media. It's the U.S. World Women's Soccer Team. Congratulations, they won the Women's World Cup, which is great. But at the same time, there's some controversy there. The big controversy is over the U.S. flag. And a lot of people have claimed that there was a purposeful dragging of the U.S. flag, dropping it on the ground, stomping on it, and then it was saved by one of the other members of the team, a Miss Kelly O'Hara. This is something that's driving people nuts, and a lot of people are talking about it, but very few people have actually seen the video. Well, we were able to find some of that video, and we want to present it to you so that you can see for yourself and make up your own mind. So we're going to go right over to that. It's about 18 seconds, so please pay attention. And we're going to start it up right now. There's the video. And I'm going to stop it right here. So the first thing you'll see, the flag is being dragged on the ground. That is a fact. We're seeing the flag being dragged on the ground, which is a disrespect, and that is intentional. She is obviously not trying to hold it off of the ground. So that's a fact. Let's go a little further in the video. We now see that, stop. She moved it from hand to hand, which means she was very aware that she had the flag in her hands and that the flag was dragging on the ground. That is a intentional action. She knows what she is doing. She then drops the flag. She knows she had it in her hand. She switched hands with it. She knows what she's doing. She drops it. It is now on the ground. She has intentionally done this. Next thing. Now, the flag being on the ground, the women start right next to her, start moving back and forth in their celebration. And is the flag being stepped on? Maybe. Is it intentional? Maybe. That's an opinion. And you can say they intentionally stepped on the flag or they just didn't care because they dropped it on the ground and didn't care about it and forgot about it at that moment. What you're seeing in the background, though, is Kelly O'Hara seeing the flag on the ground and reaching over to pick up the flag. Watch what happens next. We see that the flag is picked up and tossed back so that Kelly O'Hara can take it away because we see that they're more impressed with trying to show off and celebrate their win than the U.S. flag that they are there to represent. And the video ends with them cheering and happy and no one seeing what's happened to the U.S. flag. So that was the exact entirety of that moment. So let me tell you. Oops, we're going to come back here. Sorry. There we are. So let me just clarify here. What did we just see happen? And I think it's very clear in the video. It's 18 seconds. This is not complicated. It's real simple that, yes, and I agree with you, Christine. This is absolute disrespect to the flag. It was purposefully dragged on the ground. It was knowingly dropped. It was knowingly tossed aside. Whether or not it was stepped on, yes, different people have different opinions on that. But I think it's very clear, and I think it answers the question. Now, if you ask me, do I want to support a team that drags the U.S. flag across the ground, throws it aside as if it were a rag, and tosses it to others without care and concern because they want the spotlight on them when they are there to represent the United States? Do I want to support a team like that? No, I do not. I don't care if it's football, basketball. I don't care if it's men, women. I don't care who it is. You're dragging the United States flag on the ground. That's disrespect. You're tossing it aside like it's a rag. That's disrespect. I don't care what team you represent. I don't care what gender you are. That's disrespectful, and I think it's wrong. And I think it should be called out. Not everyone will agree with me on this. And I'm happy to hear what other people think. I see Christine says, absolutely disrespectful of the American flag. They didn't care. I agree. I think the video is very clear on that. And that's why I wanted to show it to you in its completeness. It's 18 seconds, but it's very clear what's going on there. That's wrong. And they want more money to be able to disrespect America. I'm sorry. Besides the fact that women's soccer, let's be honest, was created because the men's soccer team can't win. We can't. We're not good enough. We just aren't. And that's a fact. The world has been focused on soccer for a long time. The United States, it is not a primary game like it is everywhere else in the world. We're not as good. It's just a fact. Okay, I can accept that. And we created the women's soccer team because no other nation had a formal, organized women's soccer team. So we dominate, and we have been dominating. And I'm happy that the United States can dominate in a world sport, even though it's kind of disingenuous and unfair because the other world leaders don't care. The other nations don't care about women's soccer. And that's why it makes $131 million a year versus, and this is globally, $131 million, which is a lot of money until you look at any other sports team in the world. And no, it's really not. And when you compare it to men's soccer, which makes $6 billion a year, well, that explains why men get paid more for soccer than women do. They don't bring in the money. You want to know why WNBA players don't get paid as much as NBA players? Why there is no woman in the NBA that gets paid like Michael Jordan? Because they don't bring in money like Michael Jordan. So they don't deserve it. It's economics. It's pure. It's not racism. It's not sexism. You don't make the money. The money's not there. Bring in the revenue, pay them as much as you can. If they brought in as much money as the Yankees, then they should get paid like Derek Jeter. I have no problem with that. But the fact is, they don't, so they don't deserve it. And saying that just because of their sex they should get it, well, that is, in fact, sexism. And it's something that we're supposed to be against. They don't need to get more money just because of their gender. That's not how it works. That's not economics. But that's my opinion. You may disagree. And then Christine goes on to say, people died for the flag and are still dying. Yes, they are. And they give us the freedom to be able to have Facebook, to have iPads and iPhones, to be able to go to Starbucks, to be able to live freely. I mean, at this moment, on July 4th, the New York Times reported that in Venezuela, over the last 2 years, over 7,000 people have been killed by their government, the Venezuelan government, which is a socialist government that was promoted by Bernie Sanders as being a great godsend to mankind and something that the United States should emulate. Well, guess what? The Venezuelan government outlawed the ability to own firearms. And in the last 2 years, they have roving bands of members of the government going around and killing 7,000 people just because they want to, and staging those murders as if it were riots. That's from the New York Times, which is known to be a very left-centric newspaper. So if you disagree with that, I don't know what to tell you. But it tells you that America doesn't have that issue. You know why? We have freedom. We have the Second Amendment. We have the First Amendment. And we stand by it. And so that's a great thing. And the flag is a representation of those freedoms. People in Venezuela would love to have those freedoms. They used to have them, then they went socialist. They don't have them anymore. They're dying. They're being killed. They're eating out of garbage cans. That tells you a lot. In fact, I just had a friend of mine, an associate I work with, who, in my 9-to-5 job, because no one pays for politics, sadly, but in my 9-to-5 job, I was talking to a gentleman. He just went to Turkey. He was there for a week. And he's watching 12 and 14-year-olds eat garbage. And that's considered commonplace. And he is in a wealthier part of Turkey. And it was still common to see 12 and 14-year-olds eating garbage because of the poverty that's there, the abject poverty that makes most American poverty look like a luxury. And one of the reasons why everyone in Turkey today considers that if you are an American and you're able to go to Turkey, you're rich. And you know what? You are. And this is a guy I work with. We're talking middle class. And yet we are considered extremely rich. It's because of the opportunities that freedom has brought to us. The quality of life and the standard of life that we have that is so high compared to anywhere else in the world, it's astronomical. And quite literally, that's because of the freedoms that we have, that people have bled for, that they have died for, and that the flag represents. That's my opinion. You may think I'm wrong. Steve Cornwell may or may not think I'm right or wrong. But he should be here any moment. We're expecting him at 1, so we're still waiting for him to show up. But these are some of the things I wanted to cover beforehand so that we can see what he thinks and why he's going to be running for the 22nd District. Still waiting to see if he's going to respond. I haven't heard anything yet about him being delayed. That being said, let's go on to something else that I think I wasn't quite ready for an extended conversation. I'm more waiting for him. But there's also, on local politics, something that's very upsetting to me. And I was talking about this yesterday on Facebook. I've been talking about this for a while. The recent Broome County DA primary. We have learned that an unknown number of people, both from various parties, from Democrats, Libertarians, Conservatives, individuals who are not Republicans, were voting in the Broome County DA race. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Mike, it's not a big deal. We know for a fact that 25 people were kicked out of the vote. Their votes were not counted because they were not Republicans in the general election. And we know that in the absentee election, it is unconfirmed, but estimated that about another 100 people were not Republicans in that race. Now you say to me, Mike, well, what's that matter? There were over 9,000 people who voted, on nearly 10,000 people, which is a pitiful number, by the way. But that being said, of those less than 10,000 votes, what's another 125 votes? The race was decided by 173 votes. If we know for a fact that there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 125, minimum 125 individuals who are involved in an election that shouldn't be, whose votes should not be counted, and are influencing or attempting to influence the outcome, how many people were missed? How many people were in that election who had votes that should not have been counted? I had another individual contacted me who mentioned that their daughter was told to fill out a Democratic ballot to vote in the election because that polling station ran out of Republican ballots. So again, I have to say, how many people? How many people had their votes nullified and or had their votes otherwise either not counted and they should have been, or how many people voted and should not have been able to vote? This is a corruption of our election system. Add to that the fact that we know New York State changed the law this year for this election that allowed illegal aliens with driver's licenses to be able to vote in our elections. How many illegal aliens voted? Think about that. You may not have the candidate you want because some illegal alien with a driver's license was allowed to vote and has not been caught because they used a fake social security number, and they have voted and influenced the election. That's foreign influence in an election. Now, am I saying that absolutely happened? I can't. It's unconfirmed at this moment because the tally is still being done, and we're still seeing who voted and how they voted. But I can tell you that the chairman of the Broome County Republicans doesn't care. He doesn't care because his candidate, Paul Battisti, won by 173 votes. So he doesn't want to have a count. He doesn't care if Democrats or any non-Republicans voted in a Republican primary because he already made a choice, and his choice won. So he's not going to check to see if someone is influencing the elections. So that's a problem. Besides the fact that he's unethical, and I'm talking to you, Chairman Bijoy Datta. I have already called you out publicly about this, and I will do so again because it is unethical and it is wrong for a chairman to get involved in a primary and pick and choose winners in a race. That's not his position. That's not what he's there for. That's what the voters are there for. But that being said, I have to say, why would non-Republicans get involved in the vote? Is it because they're uneducated about the election and thought that they could vote, even though they're not part of the party in a primary? Well, that's a lack of education, and that's troubling in itself. Or are they doing it because they were told by members of the Democratic Party, the progressives, people like Plot, progressive leaders of tomorrow? Maybe they're going out and telling people, well, you know what? Our candidate, Deborah Gelson, who is a social justice activist, will not do very well against a DA who's been, a DA candidate like Michael Korchak, who's been around for 21 years and has great experience. That doesn't bode very well versus her social justice agenda. So let's get a weaker candidate, Paul Battisti, who has zero experience in the job. Let's go up against him because he can't answer any of the questions. And I say that because I've actually watched his interviews, and every time he's been in a debate, and he can't answer the questions. So that's a really good question. Why would Democrats come out and vote for a Republican in a Republican primary? Besides that, they think that picking one candidate that's weaker is better for their candidate in November because they want to win. That's a real good question. And I think it's really troubling. So that's one of the issues, and we're getting messages here on other issues, but I wanted to address all of these things because I think it's important. And our freedom is based on the freedom of our elections, the ethical quality of our elections. It's unethical when a county chairman picks and chooses who's going to be the winner of a primary. That's not his job. It's unethical and troubling when we have individuals who are uneducated about the election process and they're voting in elections they shouldn't be voting in. And it's unethical if we have parties or fringe fanatical groups like Citizen Action, like Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow or Plot, like Black Lives Matters, like Antifa, who are actively affecting our elections because they want to have an outcome that's better for them. That's disingenuous. If your candidate isn't good enough to be able to stand up against the candidates that are out there, then your candidate shouldn't be running in the race. That's point blank. Just shouldn't have them in the race. If they're not good enough to deal with their opponent, then you need to get better candidates. Not try and elect someone weaker so that you'll have a better chance. Now you may say, well, Mike, you just don't like Paul Battisti. He's not my candidate of choice. I didn't vote for him. But that doesn't change what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. What I'm talking about has nothing to do with him. Take out the name Paul Battisti and it doesn't matter. Take out Michael Korchak, take out the DA race, and put in any other race you want. Guess what? You know what I'll use as an example? Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders in 2016. We saw a similar thing happening there, where we had an election, a primary, being rigged, and voters were being nullified. Their voice was being nullified. The freedom of our elections was being influenced and affected. And I can tell you, there's a lot of Bernie Sanders voters out there who are still actively, massively upset about that because they were thrown to the wayside. They didn't matter because some elite official of a party decided that they don't count. I'm sorry, you can't do that. I disagree with that. No, I didn't vote for Bernie and I wouldn't vote for Hillary. It doesn't matter. The sanctity of our elections is more important. So if you're asking me, do I think that's important? Yeah, I do. And do I think that people should be called out for these things? Oh, yes, I do. And I will do it, whether it's a Republican, a conservative, a libertarian, a Democrat, a progressive, I don't care. Because they need to be called out. These things need to be said. And at this moment, no one in the major news media in the southern tier of New York seems to care that we had individuals violating the sanctity of our elections by voting in primaries they shouldn't be involved in. I'm the only one that I'm aware of speaking about this, that is concerned and says that we should investigate and double check that everyone who voted was in fact a voter in the Republican Party and was not an illegal alien. I don't know. But I guarantee you this, in November, if Democrats lose, they're going to be saying, hey, was every single vote a proper vote? Was everyone legally authorized to be able to make that vote? And I guarantee you that if there are any votes that are not properly registered individuals, they will go absolutely insane. On the counterpoint, if Republicans win and they say, hey, or they lose, and they say, hey, was everyone a legal voter? Were there any illegal aliens in it? They're going to say, well, we don't need to check on that. Don't worry about it. And that's a problem. That's a problem for America. You want to talk about foreign influence? There's your foreign influence. And I see that Clay Cool, by the way, Clay Cool just commented and he made a very good point. We also want to address the fact that there is some sad news today that Ross Perot passed away. Some of the listeners may be too young to remember when Ross Perot in the 80s ran for president. He is probably one of the best known third-party candidates to have ever been involved in an election. And he made a great stand and made a great point that we don't need to have just two parties for candidates. That other options exist and they should be considered. He was a billionaire. He died at the age of 89, so he had a full life. He had a strong influence on elections. Libertarians wouldn't be doing nearly as well today. Conservatives wouldn't be doing nearly as well today if it were not for the fact that Ross Perot stood up with his own money and said, America deserves another option. And he helped influence a lot of the economic policy that happened from the 80s, 90s, even till this day. And so we are sad to hear of his passing, and I am sorry to hear that. John, you are being absolutely quiet. The intern here is just letting me ramble. He's not cutting in at any point.
I mean, it's sad to hear about Ross Perot, the flag. You pretty much summed up my thoughts perfectly on the flag controversy. Pretty much perfectly. I mean, disrespectful, disgraceful. We were talking a little bit, and about equal pay in these different fields when they're not bringing in even close to the numbers that men's soccer is bringing in.
No, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, if anyone's wondering why is John the intern not being in the photo right now, it's because we have our camera kind of set up for Steve Cornwell when he comes in, and he's a little bit late, and we're still waiting for him. So I'm kind of filling space here, but I'm waiting for him. But Steve Cornwell we had our camera set up for him. But let me see if I can modify this a little bit and get John the intern in here. But John, so tell me, women's soccer, you saw the video.
Yes.
The first time you saw it was right after
It was funny. As soon as you mentioned it, I also saw it on Fox. Fox posted the video of it.
Okay.
And I think pretty much my thoughts were, wow, that was really disrespectful. First off, that you would even dare to. I've grown up with respect for the flag. I wouldn't dare even think about dropping it, dragging it, any way, shape, or form, even at a young age.
John, you're kind of falling over there. Can you prop yourself up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's disrespectful. I mean, we're never supposed to have. It should never be that the flag is dragging on the ground.
No.
It's so disrespectful in so many ways to so many people. Well, there's John there. He's a little bit far away. As I said, we had everything set up for Steve, and we're waiting for him to come here to our studio so we can speak with him live, and I'm looking forward to it. Come on, don't let me down, Steve. So, am I missing something in talking about soccer, women's soccer?
No, I think absolutely. And there's this weird trend in sports right now, I think, with Colin Kaepernick and everything like that, where, they're trying to take a stand against all this stuff by disrespecting the flag, whether it be not standing for the anthem or this. And I think you brought up a point that isn't talked about at all, that women's soccer, the U.S. team is there to represent the United States.
Right.
It's not about them. It's about a bigger representation.
It's our nation. It's like the Olympics. It's our nation represented by the best of our various athletes competing in the world.
Yeah. They're representing us on a world stage, and I think maybe their egos got to their head. They thought they were there for themselves and not the United States, and they forgot about that fact, and they just didn't care. It could have been political. I don't know. I don't know what was going through, this player's mind, but I can tell you this, that certainly disrespectful, and she deserves to be criticized heavily for it.
I think so. I think it's rightly. It's not about any kind of...
It's not about a political message.
No.
It's not. That's not what you're there for. If you want to get into politics, get into politics, but you're there to... You chose that team to represent us on the world stage in the United States. And I think they need to remember that.
Okay. By the way, folks, I'm checking on where District Attorney Steve Cornwell is, trying to double check why he might be delayed. Obviously, he is still an acting district attorney, and it's possible he may be handling a case or be in court. I don't know, but we're waiting for any kind of response from him or his team to find out more about what's going on. So if you see me looking away, that's me trying to find out, trying to find out what's going on and where he might be. So as soon as I know, I will let you know. But we are looking forward. We have a lot of questions for him. I should bring up this morning on WMBF as a reaction, or possibly as a reaction to the fact that we're looking to do an exclusive interview with Steve Cornwell today. WNBF had the third candidate. There's 3 declared candidates in the race at this moment. That's George Phillips, who we did an interview with on July 3rd. There is obviously Steve Cornwell. We're about to do an interview with him. And of course, there's Franklin Sager. Franklin Sager is, well, it's hard to say. In 1 second, just wait. I'm getting an update on where he is. Okay, I'm just waiting for Steve Cornwell to show up. It seems that we're being told. So I'm being told that Steve Cornwell, and it sounds like he may be here already. And it sounds like we were waiting for him. It sounds like there was a miscommunication about the time on when to be here. And so he may have thought it was 1:30. We thought it was 1. These things happen. So it's not a problem. Come on in, Steve. I'm already live. Don't mind my little puppy there. Steve, no, you it's right there. We have District Attorney Cornwell in, and he's getting to meet Khan, the true terror that he is, my little half Scotty, half Bichon character. Take a second. Do you need water?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Just relax for a second. Let me get the camera set. Just move perfect. And let me check. And folks, just give us a second as we get our cameras a little bit better for you, because we reset everything. And there you go. Perfect. And we have on with us right now Steve Cornwell, the current district attorney of Broome County. And you can probably hear a little better now. I forgot to turn on his mic for a second. And also a candidate for the New York 22nd District. And let's start off. First of all, Steve, I want to apologize. It seems that there was a miscommunication about the time that you would be here. I thought it was clearly stated that it was 1. I'm hearing that it was 1:30 from your team. I'm not sure. It could be my error there. Probably was my error, but not a problem. So I apologize for that. But I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here. I didn't want to make anybody wait, but yeah, we had 1:30 from you to my team a text, and we had planned on being there. And my wife called at 1:05 and said, "Where are you? You're supposed to be on the show." So.
Yeah, and I had it on, and I put it out in the public at 1, and maybe it's because I wanted to start a little early. Life takes us all, and this is my fault, folks. I blame it on me, because sometimes that happens. You just mix up sometimes, and you're trying to do as much time as possible with you. So that's my fault. I apologize for that. But let's move forward, because there's a lot to talk about. And I've been listening to some of the things you've been saying. I've heard you on WUTQ up in the north in Oneida County. I've listened to you on WMBF after you've made your announcement. And been looking over your websites. There's so many questions. But before I can get to any of those, let me start off first of all and ask you, who is Steve Cornwell, for the people who don't know?
I am currently the Broome County District Attorney. I was elected in 2015, and my wife and I have 7 children that are all grown, 3 of them police officers. And, I've been working tirelessly at the DA's office to make big changes since I ran for office. And, I was just a private attorney when I ran. I was never involved in politics. But now here I am, and decided I'm going to run for Congress in the 22nd District and fight for the people, as I've been doing when I represented the people of the state of New York here in Broome County. And I'm going to continue to do that throughout the 22nd District and fight for the people and the rights of the people to control their government and be honest with the people and worry about the people of upstate New York first. And that's what I plan on doing.
Okay, and I thank you for that. I always think it's important in every race that we have as many qualified people as possible, individuals who have a true conviction. And I thank you for running, because I've run this race. It's a difficult race. It's 2.5 hours north to south, 1.5 hours east to west. It's a lot of land to cover. It's a difficult race. So I don't envy you the adventure you're about to go on. Now, one of the first things I would have to ask is, what back in January, you made the announcement that you're looking to, you weren't going to seek re-election for the DA race, and that you were looking for new opportunities. I believe on that very same day in January, I made the assumption that you're going to be going for the New York 22nd race. We now find today that you are. So first I would ask, why? What's the motivation for being congressman? And then I would ask, why the delay?
It's a good point. Now, when I announced I wasn't going to run again, I had decided and was very comfortable in what we had done in the first 3 years. And I did what I said I was going to do. And then, obviously, I kept doing, everything that I could to make things better here in Broome. And I felt in a good place that, we had accomplished a lot, had great success, and I wanted to move on and do other things. So there were, I had many opportunities, different things I could consider, but obviously this race was one of them that was in my mind. And the reason is pure and simple. I want to do it for the right reason. I feel that it's what I've been called to do, and I want to fight for the people and bring the same hard work and dedication and commitment to fight for us and getting back, the way things really used to be, and expanding, from the party, from the Republicans' perspective, to expanding the Republican Party to other bases that weren't traditionally, bases, or maybe they were actually many years ago Republican, and now they're not. So I want to bring more people together, more people into the party, show through hard work and dedication and working for the people of upstate New York that we can do amazing things, and I feel that I'm in a place to do that. In my life that I don't. It's not something I have dreamed about my whole life or anything like that. It's just I know that I can make a huge difference, and that I think that people will support me. And if they do, I love it. And I'll go fight for them. If they choose somebody else, then I'll go do something else, and maybe it wasn't meant to be. But I'm certainly in and going to fight to do everything that I can to move things in the right direction here in upstate New York.
Okay. Now, Steve, I'm sure by now you've probably heard, and I know you're a member of the party, I'm a member of the Republican Party, I think it's pretty well known, that I'm a tough interview. But I'm a fair interview. So I do have some tough questions for you. I have some easy questions for you. But I think they're all questions that people are going to be very interested about. And we want to delve a little bit into that. And I know that John, the intern, is got a few questions as well. Let me first probably start off with, and I was listening to your conversation on July 3rd on WUTQ. And for people who have not had the opportunity to hear that, it is up on their station, on their website, in its entirety, so people can hear exactly what you said. But I would ask, in that conversation, you were asked to describe yourself, how you stand out as a Republican. And I believe your comment was that you're a fiscally conservative Republican and a social liberal. Now, that wasn't followed up, and I was struck by that.
Not exactly. That's no.
Okay, yeah. And thank you for clarifying, and that's why I'm asking you, what was that?
I said that, and I probably should have said moderate, but I said that some of my views were more liberal than the traditional base.
I stand corrected.
And so that just means not as way it was before. These names, it's hard to nail it down whether it's conservative, moderate, liberal. I'm extremely conservative. All my issues are very conservative, but some of the things that I have done and I believe in were not traditionally what you see Republicans doing. And I have the community outreach that I do. I work in poor neighborhoods. I work with Rescue Mission, through their homeless shelter, because I believe those things are important because we're teaching people to become better people. I think it's extremely conservative to do those things, but it gets viewed by other people as maybe that wasn't an issue that Republicans were addressing. The drug treatment that I do, those were traditionally more, people on the Democratic side were saying, that those issues were more important to them. And, I took some heat when we started doing a lot of drug treatment programs and things like that in the beginning. But what I've shown is whether you're doing it for humanitarian reason, because, it's the right thing to do to care for people, or you're doing it because it prevents crime, because if you get people off drugs, they're not committing crimes,
Right.
then, that's a very conservative philosophy. So in my mind, it's very conservative what I'm doing, but some people may view it as not the traditional conservatism, lock them up, throw away the
Right.
key, law and order, that type of thing. So that was one of the things. And I didn't get a chance to explain
No,
it.
and that's-
they were asking 5 different questions at the same time.
Right. And that's why I wanted to
Right.
clarify, because it struck me, and again, memory after the fact, it rings different. And that's why I wanted to give you the opportunity to
Right.
clarify that, because I know there are many people who are going, wait a minute, what did you just say? Why? What does that mean?
I recognize that. I'm glad I got a chance to clear it up, and I wanted to do that when I went back there. So I was talking like how other people would view it.
Right.
And the other thing I think is on civil rights issues. It's very important to me as a lawyer, especially when you go through law school and you read the Supreme Court decisions and look at historically what was done in this country to disenfranchise Black Americans and gays and other people. That's not what the conservative Republican Party is about.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they were so busy fighting on some of those other issues, they got painted as being anti-gay, anti-black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't like that, because I think the conservative Republican Party is open, and we should be actively going into Black communities and talking about why we think our party is better. And as far as gay rights are concerned, I have a unique perspective on that. My father was gay, and that was in the paper in 2015 when I was running for district attorney, and he passed during that race, and the article went into great detail about him and his partner and raising me when I was about 13 years old. So it was a very, I came from a very unique perspective on that, because I was, I'm torn, you know what I mean, I think, but I've seen what the effects of discrimination against people who are gay,
For gender and
for
sexual
gender,
preferences.
and I take strong exception to that, because I think that the Republican Party should be obviously a party for all people, and that the Democratic Party doesn't own all of those issues or all the people. There are plenty of Republican families that have people who are gay or lesbian or transgender in their family, and you can't just discount those people like something's wrong. So that's,
Yeah.
I think that's where I was coming from, and you see the things I do. You see the community events that I do. I go to the poorest neighborhoods. I go to Black neighborhoods. I address white, Black.
No, you're fair.
Or
You're,
rich.
you're fair across the board with all of that, and which is why it threw me and said, okay, I need to ask that question. I want that clarification, and that's what this show is about. I don't like sound bites. I don't like any of the bullet points. I want a conversation like we're having, so we can get clarity and really understand. And I thank you for that, because I think it's really important. And I agree. Gender and identity and sexual preference politics doesn't help anyone. It separates people.
Right.
It's one of the worst things. And I do admit.
And I don't care what two adults are
That's
doing
their
in
private
the
lives,
right.
yeah.
And that's not always been traditionally, the Republican stance on that. And
True.
I think it's changing. I think that's where society is now. And anything that we can do to bring people into a party and not exclude them from a party is what we need to do. We need to do it both parties, all parties. I mean, these opinions should be open to everybody. We should discuss them, flush them out, and we'll move forward that way.
Okay. By the way, just to let you know, on Facebook Live, we are monitoring for any questions that are coming in, as well as on my Twitter, also by email, or someone may call in. It's all possible. I also know that John, the intern, is actively watching this, but I know he had a couple of questions as well. Go ahead, John.
Sure. I represent kind of the BU student type generation.
Millennial.
Yeah, Generation Z. We debate about that quite a bit. One of the issues that I think a lot of college kids care about, and me and Michael disagree about this a bit, is marijuana. So I wanted to know what your stance on marijuana specifically was.
So marijuana in small amounts has already been decriminalized decades ago in New York State. You can have up to 25 grams, and it's not a criminal charge. It's a civil fine, and there's no punishment for you, even if you don't pay the fine. That's the truth. So they've already done it many years ago. the Assembly passed a law, which basically I think up to an ounce now would be decriminalized, and then there'll be some expungement for people who have been charged before. So is it a question of legalization? It brings up a couple of issues if you bring up legalization. First of all, you're going to have a black market.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which they're not going to want to pay the 18 or 20% tax rate or go to wherever you're supposed to buy it, and they'll want to buy better marijuana on the street. So I mean that's an argument to look at, and I think you have to look at the number of DWI drug cases. If you look at Colorado, the increase that they've had in those DWI driving drug cases, they're going to go up. We're already planning on that. The state police have already changed their training in the police academy to be prepared for when if this happens, to how to spot drivers that are driving drugged. So you're going to have more of that. And then I think the third thing is that every psychosocial evaluation that I've read for somebody who's on drugs, addicted to drugs rather, that's been marijuana is somewhere in that story, right? So
every time.
And I'm not saying it's a gateway drug that one leads to the next. I think everybody is different, and some things do and some things don't. But what I'll tell you is, I believe in encouraging people not to use drugs and to teach them not to use drugs. But I also I understand the argument when people say, well, I mean, marijuana and alcohol, are similar, or some say one's worse or better, than the other for different reasons and health reasons. There's a lot of things that aren't good for us that are legal. Yeah. There's a lot of things that maybe aren't bad for us that are not legal. So that's a decision that, the states make, and that's a decision that each individual state will make. And it looks like for the most part, I think that's where New York is headed. So again, that's kind of to be decided by the states, and that's my position, on it. Is I would consider all of those things. So I wouldn't advocate at this point, that marijuana should simply be legalized. I mean, there's a lot of other issues in there you have to look at.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I guess my second question was more, I mean, you're going to go from kind of a local position to a federal position, so you're going to be dealing a lot with foreign policy. Have you had any foreign policy experience? And if so, what was it? Do you have any thoughts on Iran or anything currently going on in foreign policy?
Obviously, there's a ton of foreign policy issues that will be decided in this Congress. You have to be up on those. Obviously, Iran specifically, what you talk about, that, a couple of weeks ago, we may have been bombing a country for shooting down a $120 million remote control plane, in essence. So I think that ultimately the right decision was made. I don't think it was a time to go off, off the handle and get into a conflict, which was going to have great implications, because immediately Israel is going to be under attack, and then you have to see what the Russians are going to do. Obviously, the Russians are going to get involved. Maybe they decide to take over that airspace and see what we want to do, and push the envelope a little bit. And don't think that China wouldn't get involved as well, because they would be right there as well. So you have to. It'd be different if they attacked not just a military asset, but if they attacked an American. It would be different. But I tell you what I would do. What I would have done is I would have brought that issue before the United Nations. I would have, talked to our other allies, and I would have said, we have a little discrepancy here. We have a plane, a drone, if you will, that was shot down. We say it's in international airspace. They say that it's in
their national
airspace.
Yeah.
So let's do this. There's several countries that have the ability to GPS plot where it happened. It's all recorded. It's on satellite. So let's place where it happened. And if it happened in international airspace, they were wrong.
And there's a problem.
And now if they were wrong, what do we do about it? And you lobby your other friendly countries and other people in the area that should take notice. You lobby them and let them know, hey, we have a problem. They just shot down an American aircraft in international airspace. So what are we going to do about it? Now, the game totally changes if they shoot down aircraft with
With
Americans
people.
in it.
Right, that's
Then
indefinite.
it's at that
It doesn't
point,
matter.
Right, game on.
Yeah.
So we protect our people, we protect our own. But and if for some reason it was determined by legitimate sources that we weren't in international airspace, then I suppose that we shouldn't have been in theirs. But I would want to know for sure. And as far as the president's powers, he certainly has the powers to act, but it is primarily defensively to protect America and American assets and Americans. And if you're going to get into a conflict that turns into a war with some major superpowers, then Congress decides that, and that's up to the president to make that sales pitch to Congress. It's up to Congress to authorize the war if that's what's going to happen. Certainly there's conflicts that they can operate in, and it doesn't have to be like immediately right now in the next 5 minutes, but it does have to be close in time, I believe, for a president to use that force. I think he could have in this situation, but I'm glad that he didn't. But I think he was close enough that you could make that argument. Because of the other tensions that are escalating in the area as well. But I think cooler heads prevailed, and we'll get to the bottom of it, see exactly what happened. And they certainly don't like the sanctions that are, being put on them, which is exactly why they respond with saying, now we're going to enrich even more. So they're going to do.
They were going to do that.
They're going to do that anyway. So it's not like they were holding off to in their
deference to anybody.
Efforts. Yeah. So I mean, those are things, but that's the whole point: is you get people in a room with different experiences in business and public service and in the military, and you get them in the room and you make the right decisions and you talk it out.
Okay, and thank you for clarifying that, because I think too often we've seen no one is talking about some of the key factors of Congress. You're going to be dealing with international issues. You're going to deal with economics. You're going to deal with race relations. It's all in there. And so having a good understanding of where you stand on all of them is important. But there's another aspect of this. And actually, I should first say, Rita O'Brien, she asked, where was your interview? And the interview with Steve Cornwell with WUTQ, which was on July 3rd, is on WUTQ, their website. They are a news radio station in Utica itself. Great show. I've been on there many times. They're good friends of mine. I've known them for about 6-7 years now. And you'll be able to see it. They have they record all of their interviews. Just want people to know where they can find stuff. And by the way, I want to give a quick shot here and want people to know, because you have a website, and I want people to be able to see that as well, which is Steve Cornwell.
CornwellForThePeople.com is my website. And then Steve Cornwell for the People, you can find me on Facebook.
Right. And we'll mention it again towards the end of the interview, but I just want to make sure that we did highlight that for everyone. Steve, one of the big questions that we have to ask, and I've asked this of George Phillips, and I think you may be aware, I've been following the New York 22nd District congressional races since 2008. And I've talked to pretty much everybody in every race, every time. And one of the things that is always consistently an issue is money. Now in 2014, 2016, and 2018, the New York 22nd District was among the top 10 races in the nation for Congress. It has raised some of the top dollars for elections in every race, and 2020 looks to be absolutely in line with that. I expect it to be a $14-15 million race. At this moment, at least, exactly. And I've usually been closer than most estimates on what it's going to wind up being. So that's my estimate right now. At this moment, there are 3 known named candidates. There are probably 2 to 3 others that I am aware of that may come into the race. There is Franklin Sager, who has loaned himself $2,200 and raised $100. He's claiming to be a candidate, although he hasn't reached the congressional definition of it. There is George Phillips, who's on his 4th run for the race. He has, according to FEC records today, I checked it just before you came in. $50,000. He claims that he will be up to $100,000 in the next filing. And then you have not filed yet. Money is important. Do you believe you will be able to raise funds? Do you believe you'll be able to be competitive in this race?
I don't think I'll just be competitive. I know I'm going to win it. But as far as raising the funds, I'll raise the funds. We have a plan to raise the funds. We've been working on doing that. So we have a good plan to fundraise. And our first filing will be October 15th.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll see by October 15th. But we have working very diligently to fundraise and to get some people involved in the campaign that are nationally recognized, that run premier races in the country. So that's what you can expect, from my perspective. And then, I'll put in my own money as well. I've never been, shied away from doing that in the last race, and I won't shy away from doing that in this race. As far as the candidates, the first one I know nothing about.
No one does.
The second one, nice guy, can't win. He lost 3 times. He cannot win this race. He cannot win this district. He's never been elected to anything before. He has no public record. These are just facts. I'm not saying anything negative about him. These are just facts.
These are true, yes.
He was given a position with the county legislature, and when that happens, you're supposed to run after that. And they make sure when they appoint you to that, you're going to be there and you're going to run, and he didn't run. So, he served a short period of time in a fill-in position.
1 year. 1 year to be exact.
1 year as a pinch hitter, and then he never, got up and ran his own race. So, it is impossible for him. I think he got 5,700 votes or something last time. I have to look that up, but it's
2016. He came in 13 in a 3-way primary race. He came in with 13%. He did win Broome County, but lost everywhere else. Those are the numbers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you can't win. He's proven he can't win 3 times, and at some point, it'd be insanity to try to do it a 4th time. Nice guy, I like him. He can't win, and if he did win, he'd get eaten up in Albany or in Washington rather. He would. He can't do it. I know he has some connections to really great people who I support, as well, and I think he's shown us, that he can't win. So it's time to move on and let somebody else try it. Somebody with a record. And somebody who's been a proven winner, and I won an election against a 28-year incumbent when I was nobody and just an attorney locally who wanted to win, and I took on the establishment and everybody else to do it. So I would hope that we separate the pretenders from the contender sooner rather than later, because then we could bring the party together and get people on the right path to winning this seat back, because it's very important. This seat is owned by Nancy Pelosi, bought and paid for by Nancy Pelosi, and that's it. And every seat in the House is, so long as she's in charge. So that's where our efforts need to be, and we will fundraise. I will do everything that I have to do. We already have a great start, and we'll have some announcements soon about some people that have run premier federal elections that will be working with us.
Okay. And I just wanted to be fair, because I did ask George about money, and I know this is an important thing in every race. And of course, you've been in the race officially for a week, so can't hold it against you if you don't have numbers yet or you're not disclosing them yet, because it's perfectly fair a week into the race. But it did need to be asked. Let me ask you something else. Now, I'm a conservative Republican, very well known. I've known Representative Brindisi Anthony for 7 years now. We disagree vehemently on many issues.
But at least you can call each other friends, right? I mean, you can say a friend of mine. You don't have to say an expletive, right? I mean, he's a person that you can disagree with, I suppose, and not. Or do you hate him?
We are very publicly polite. We
I guess that's my
disagree.
point. You have to be. I probably wouldn't agree with him on anything, including if we bought lunch in the same place. But I will say that anybody who serves this country, and I wish people would do this with the president or Congress or the Senate, deserves the respect, of their office. That they do respect this country. I don't respect any of his decisions that I can think of. And
you mean Brindisi when you're saying that?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and but but with that being said, you do respect the office. That's our duty.
Oh, absolutely.
To do that.
And I respect Anthony's position always as a representative. I cannot not do so. And I don't want to give anyone that impression that I don't. We disagree on policy, and that's a very important thing. But I have called him several times. I've been following him since the day he got elected as our representative.
Has he been on the show with you?
He's been promising for 3 years to be on here with me, and for 3 years he is not doing it.
If he wants to come on, I'll be happy to join him, and we can have a debate right here for as long as you would like.
I would love that to happen. But I think he's afraid of answering some very simple questions about his efficiency. And I have a question about that. I don't believe he's being very efficient when you can't get more than 3 people to support a bill. He has 7 bills. None of them are being supported by the majority or even a minority of Congress. That's a fact from, you can look up congress.gov, you'll see his voting record, and you'll see the support he gets for the bills he's put out. But that brings me a question. We've seen this with Richard Hanna. He had no support for 2 terms out of his 3 terms as a representative of New York 22nd District. Claudia Tenney had great support, but lost the race. We now have Anthony Brindisi, and he has no support again, which means that our district loses money, loses influence, loses opportunity to grow and improve. You're an outsider to Congress. How do you get other members, the other 433 members of Congress, 134, to say, yeah, Steve Cornwell, he's got these great ideas. I want to support him. I want to support the New York 22nd District. How do you get that?
I bring ideas that a lot of people don't bring. They're new ideas. They're not, policy wonk, think tank ideas. I bring practical, common sense ideas like I did at the DA's office to get things done. And then you have to be able to sell that. You have to make it has to make sense. You have to be able to sell it. You have to go out and work and sell it. And not worried about getting reelection, and not worry about reelection, not worry about who you're making mad or
right.
Not. I mean, it just, you have to do it for the right reason and not be a politician. I think, you're a politician in the way that obviously that, you work to convince people to believe in what you're proposing, but you have to reach out and really with good ideas and good solutions and some experience and a track record. And I have a track record of doing that. You talk about bills that he can't get support for. Well, you could talk about the bills that he eventually got support for, the bills when he was in the assembly, the late term abortion bill. I mean, that's his.
Oh, yeah.
He sponsored it like 3 times.
Yeah.
So, Anthony Brindisi got the late term abortion bill passed. So you can give him credit for that. So now he can be happy that his bill that he sponsored, you can terminate the life of a child up until the time they're
right
born.
at the moment of birth.
So, that's not a bill that I would be proud of. And unfortunately, he couldn't get the support when he was there, even though he tried 3 times. But his bill passed. So I'd be interested in asking him about that. And if he's had a change of heart on that, or if that's what that's what he truly still believes, he thinks that bill was a good idea, because that's the
He
law.
sidestepped that issue. He really hasn't addressed that.
Well, he's going to answer it to me or the voters somewhere along the line. We're going to find out exactly what he believes about that bill that he sponsored, and we will get an answer, because he's going to be asked that many times and anywhere I could find him. So I'll give him the heads up now. He's got time to come up with an answer. Well,
here's something that he hasn't answered over 3 years, an issue that I'm very, very vehement. I'm a very outspoken Second Amendment advocate. One of the biggest bills, and I think I reached out to your office before about this, about the red flag legislation. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Then... and people who've been following know about this. It's basically a way to circumvent due process and to take away legally owned firearms by individuals because someone else has an opinion that they don't like. So, and that's a summary of it, essentially, which isn't quite legal. That's not the legal summary.
It's pretty close.
But it takes a little longer to go through the legal summary. But there is the red flag legislation being proposed in Congress, both in the Senate and in the House at this time. Do you support red flag legislation on a national level? Do you support the Second Amendment?
I support the Second Amendment. I do not support the red flag laws. The way it's written was horrible in New York, and it'll be even worse in Congress because they can't write any law that makes sense, it seems to me. And not only do if you want to talk about nationally, I believe in a national right to carry your arm.
Mm-hmm.
You carry arms. I mean, pistol permits, reciprocity of pistol permits. It's ridiculous that you can be in New York and be a licensed gun owner, but you can't go across the border into Pennsylvania. So this is obviously affects federal jurisdiction, and I would like to see reciprocity between the states. So if you're licensed in one state, you can carry to other states, and if that means that means good standards, then that means good standards. Because you talk to police officers, they certify once a year on their weapon. My investigators actually, I have 18 police officers that work for me. We certify 4 times a year. I make them go to the range and certify 4 times a year instead of just 1. So and if you talk to people, I think that the public would be willing to do some of those things, to certify, to make sure you took deadly force courses and things like that. Gun owners are law-abiding
99.999
people by and large, right? Yeah, there's
literally 99.999%. Yes.
So my position is licensed gun owners that are obviously you have to check. We're not going to give criminals guns. We're not going to give people with mental problems, mental issues that they're dealing with guns. I mean that everybody can agree on that. It's not any felon can walk out of prison and walk into a store and buy a gun. That's
right.
Not what we're saying. But we're saying law-abiding Americans have an absolute right. I mean, just think about that. You have a right under the Constitution to own a gun.
Inalienable. And
they try to take that right away, and it's the Democratic Congress that's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly Anthony Brindisi is going to go along with whatever they pass. Otherwise, he'd come out and he'd say, more guns, less crime. But he's not going to ever say that.
No.
I can guarantee you that. And in upstate New York, where you have hunters and outdoorsmen and many people that believe in their constitutional right.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's a constitutional right to keep and bear arms, meaning you can have a carry concealed permit. That's a right they're trying to take away. A driver's license is a privilege. It's not even a right.
Right.
And they're trying to give privileges
You're talking about the green light
to
bill.
people. You're trying to give privileges to people that are not entitled to them,
Yes.
and take rights away from people who are entitled to them. So, yeah, I mean, the priorities I think are a little backwards, but I'm a strong Second Amendment advocate. I have 3 sons that are police officers. In our house, it's normal, for us to be Second Amendment. There's a lot of guns, I suppose, if you will, and the history of our family and going hunting, and obviously police officers and protecting ourselves. So that's an issue that I'm a strong believer in. I can't imagine why any person in upstate New York that respects their rights to the Constitution, their right to keep and bear arms, one of the most fundamental rights that we have, to legally own a weapon to protect ourselves, how they could ever vote for somebody that wouldn't stand up for that right. I mean, it's just, can you imagine if somebody said, "I don't stand for free speech"? I don't stand. I don't stand.
Actually, they do.
Well,
I hear that on campus a lot. Yeah.
So, it's like I said, I'm very traditionalist when it comes to the Constitution, and I believe in what made this country great is exactly that. That's why the patriotic aspect and the founding of this country and what it was designed to be is so important. I think if we get out and sell that message to more people and more groups, it's only going to be favorable. Like, I can't stand when somebody says, somebody's kneeling for the flag, and somebody says people fought and died for your right to kneel before the flag.
Right.
No, actually they didn't. I think if the people knew that they were going to go into battle so you could kneel.
There may have been some disagreements.
Yeah, I think I don't think we should say that they all would have. They fought. I don't think that's what they thought they were. I think they thought they were fighting and dying for the flag and what it meant and what's behind it. not for people to disrespect the flag. You kneel before God, you stand for the flag.
I like that, and thank you for making that clear. And that's a big issue, and that will be a big issue in this race. And I'm a major advocate against the red flag laws, which doesn't mean that's good or bad for any candidate, but that's where I stand. So I thank you for giving me a clear answer on that. I have maybe one or two more questions here. I'll try and be very brief. I thank you. I know that, as I said before, you're actively still the DA, so I do appreciate.
This is my lunch hour for the people that may want to complain. This is my lunch hour. We take the time separate and do this on our own time. So during the week and whenever I'm called after hours on the weekend, that's my main job. My main loyalty is to the DA's office, which I never answered the second part of your question, why the delay?
Yeah.
I didn't want to start campaigning in January when I have a job to do when I'm a DA. And my goal was to finish the job that I started at the DA's office. But you have to recognize that it's getting late in the race not to announce and not to get in. But during the week and whenever I'm called after hours, I'll be there for the DA's office first. But then I will do, some appearances and some things and primarily focus on nights and weekends to do that. Because quite honestly, I'm offended when people run for office to run for another office. I gave up my job. I have no job on January 1st. I'm going to run full time. I'm not going to work. I'm going to run. And I will be working every day, 7 days a week between now and that election. You can bet that. I customarily work 100 hours a week anyway. That's what I do. So I will work that entire time to win this race, do whatever I have to take. Whatever I have to do.
And you did answer one of the questions, because I was going to come back to you didn't answer that. So, because I do pay attention. So you did, and I thank you for that. And for people who don't know, I am about 7 minutes away from your office. So we're not taking away from the time of the people, which is why I'm saying I've only got time for maybe one or two questions, so that you can get back and hopefully you got some McDonald's or something on the way. But I thank you for indulging me to give me that little extra time. One of the questions I wanted to ask is, have you spoken to former Congresswoman Claudia Tenney? Because obviously many people as I mentioned, there are many people who may enter the race. She's rumored to be one. Mayor Rich David of Binghamton is rumored to be one. Have you spoken to these individuals?
I haven't spoken to either one of them about this. I haven't spoken to Claudia since the day before the last elections, the last time I spoke to her when she was in town. So no. And my position is if they want to get in, because it just gives me a better chance to differentiate myself and separate myself from everybody else. And I think I'm a different type of candidate. I could separate them. I would do a debate every single day for an hour between now and election day, and we'll see who remains standing. That's my position on these things. I don't run from anybody. I don't duck anybody.
No, you're here.
I'll answer questions with anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere, any elected official, that wants to run for office, or a legitimate opponent that wants to run for office. I'm not going to take somebody that's never done anything and put them on the same platform. So absolutely, George Phillips wants to come in, talk. We'll talk. Whoever wants to come in, wherever they want to come in. Jump in the race, get in. There's plenty of room for all of us, and I just think it gives me a great opportunity to separate myself and let people really choose. The more choices is the better. Look at the record, and we didn't even talk about the record that what we've done in Broome County, and here we're almost at the end. Dropped crime by 20%. The 3 years I was DA, with my administration in place, were the three lowest crime rates in history since it was recorded in 1990. That's not by accident. And I'm not taking credit for it. I brought a lot of people in to help me. I worked with all the police agencies, the drug task force, other people. And like I said, who cares who gets the credit? But you can't dispute those numbers. We've attacked the opioid epidemic like no other county has. I put 1,000 people into treatment. We started a treatment alternative to prosecution, working with our partners at ACBC. So if people are charged initially with a drug charge, they're given the opportunity from the time of arrest. We literally have gotten people in within hours of arrest to be interviewed, and send people to go talk to them at police stations, and then get them into the program. And they go into the program. We're at about 200 people now in that program since April of last year. And we were running at about 75% success rate for a drug treatment program. That's excellent, and those were people that completed the 90-day treatment and stayed out of trouble for 6 months, because they have to do that or the charge can come back.
Right.
And they've done that. So we've done those things. We saved taxpayers $2 million in welfare fraud through our welfare fraud partnership. It only exists because of the DA's office, but we couldn't do it without Department of Social Services and Broome Security, because they take the lead on those investigations. But we've agreed to do it under the law. We have that right. We put 10 resource officers in schools that needed them, that otherwise couldn't afford them, for a very low cost that the school pays for, no additional cost to taxpayers. They found it in their budgets. To be able to do that, to protect thousands of our kids in smaller communities that didn't have a police force in their community.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been able to do, all of those things. We rebuilt the office. We're totally paperless now, so we don't have these warehouses full of boxes like has been going on for years and years and years.
Oh, yes.
I did it at no cost to taxpayers. I mean, I worked out a deal where we would be we would kind of be the trial case. To go completely paperless, and we don't pay for that. That's provided for us by prosecutor, New York Prosecutor Training Institute. So NIPT provides that for us and helps us run that. We've have bureaus now where so people specialize in different types of crimes, so become experts in them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We've had a Special Victims Bureau, which is our largest bureau now. We've added multiple people to that bureau, so we have a domestic violence specialist. And other trained people who work with children who have been sexually abused. So we're doing all those things, and they're all new. We raised $4 million in 3 years in traffic diversion funds. So if people have get a traffic ticket, they get a defensive driving course, and they pay a fee. So the course makes them a better driver, hopefully, and not want to do it again. And the fee helps us fund up to 10 positions in our office. We've done contractor seminars to help people understand how not to have the property taken, funds stolen from them when dealing with contractors and not for profits, and instruct them. All those are crime prevention programs. The workforce program we have now, where we take people, young people, whether they're in the criminal justice system or not, from 18 to 24, and we get them into the workforce. And the theory being, if they're working and making a paycheck, they're not out, stealing and causing trouble, right? So
Right.
We do that, and we've worked with the Urban League on that, and we're able to provide $50,000 in funds to the Urban League through traffic diversion money, so that they can reach out and have more and more people take advantage of these work programs that are out there, because there's 1,300 open jobs right now that need to be filled, that are jobs that you don't require a degree for. So we're doing all those things, and it's an interesting approach, because they're not traditionally what was done by DAs. They were reactive. They figured the police, charge who they charge, and then we prosecute the case. Well,
it is a different approach. Yeah.
It's a completely different approach, and it's surprising, to my other DAs, but now other counties are picking up some of those programs. Like, I don't know any other DA in the country that put school resource officers in schools, or but it's important to me, because it's crime prevention, it's education. Hopefully those kids are the kids that aren't getting in trouble, that aren't doing drugs, that are turn out to be great productive members of society. That's what we want. We want to build our society up, and we want to get people in the system, meaning in the system working,
Right.
in the system prospering and being productive and paying taxes. Yes, we want more people in the system, so they're paying to help us when you and I get old pretty soon. So
Me before you. I'm older than you are.
So those are the things that we've done, and we're gonna. I could keep doing and bring those ideas, and we'll talk more issue based. I'm not just going to sit, come on and say, well, I just want to fix everything. I have plans.
No.
I have programs. Believe me, you know me. I plan these things out, and we're gonna release that, and release our platform, and release the different plans, and so we'll do that, and it's going to be a different kind of race, but I think it's the right time, it's the right place. And, we'll see if I'm the right fit for the people, if that's, what the people want. But the commitment that I've made to Broome County last time will be the same commitment that I make this time. I don't owe anything to anybody, and that's what's great.
That's a big thing.
That's
yeah.
what's great about being Steve Cornwell. I owe nobody nothing, and I only do things because it's the right reason, and I feel like I'm doing good for more people, and I'm going to continue to do that. And if it's a great match between me and the voters on in June of next year in 20, then great. And then if it's on November 3rd of 20 when they vote, then great. That was actually a pretty good day in history for me, so I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Actually, one of the things I always like to end with is I open it up and say, because I know we cover a lot of ground here. And I always like to end it with, is there anything we missed or anything you want to impart on people? So instead, my last question, very simply, is just going to be, I know I have a reputation, like I said at the beginning, many people say I'm a tough interview. I ask tough questions and I expect honest and clear answers. What do you think? Fair? Good?
I think it's absolutely fair interview. I want tough questions. If we wanted easy questions, people aren't going to see you under fire. Mm-hmm. And people need to see you under fire, and they're not mean-spirited questions, but people need to be pressed.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you don't know something, say I don't know it.
Simple enough.
You're not a know-it-all,
yeah.
right? And you go and you look into the issue, because nobody's supposed to be an encyclopedia. Have the right answer all the time. And obviously, you have a chance to clarify some things, as I hope we did.
I think we did.
A one-on-one session is easier than three people wanting to know a lot about you and they don't know you and don't get to understand where you're coming from. But I think the more I'm out there and the more I talk, the more honest I am with the people, that they'll get that. And that's contrary usually to tell politicians just to hide, wait for the money to come out.
Not on this program.
Send some mailers out, do your TV commercials, and let them build an image of you that you would never be able to maintain if you went out to the public and came on a show like this, because you get eaten alive.
Oh yeah.
So it's much easier when you just tell the truth and you don't have to worry about what you said or supposed to say before. Mm-hmm. Because if you start trying to remember what you're supposed to say, you're in the wrong business.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. And I don't take truck with that. I do want to give you two comments from Christine Smith. She says, "Thank you, Steve, for saying you don't support late-term abortion," and also that she wishes that Johnson City had a research officer in the schools.
We do too, but we haven't. Haven't come to that at this point. I know there was support among the teachers for that, and hopefully in the future, if that's what they decide, we'll be there. We're not forcing it down anybody into their budget or anything. So if they want to do that and they decide it's the right thing to do, we'll be there to make sure we can assist.
Okay, and folks, one more time, I want to show, if I can find myself here. Sorry, I got a lot of pages there. Nope. Oh, I know why. Bear with me, folks. There it is. Too many buttons there. Again, you can find out more about Steve from Steve Cornwell for the People. Please do look into that and check that out to learn more about the candidate and our DA. And of course, I'm open door to come back. I do expect to see you again. I want to introduce you first. And as you come out with more policy positions, I'm of course going to look them over, and I'll be happy to talk with you about it. As well as all the candidates that are involved in the New York 22nd District, as I've been doing for over a decade now, and I will continue to do. And hopefully at some point, we may see the congressman come in and live up to his 3-year promise, which kind of tells me a whole lot about what he thinks of his constituents. That's my personal point of view. I'm not speaking for anyone else. That's just me. But I do thank you again for Steve Cornwell coming in, speaking with us here on No Soundbites Allowed. Folks, I look forward to seeing you again. Let's hear your comments. Tell us what you think of the interview, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon. Everyone, be well.